can go back and watch the press conference in the run-up to the war, and all the reporters in that room, esteemed journalists, quality journalists, but they look like deer in headlights. I think what it always comes down to, unfortunately, is access. And I think a lot of the big media companies have got so close to those in power, and you've got the journalists and the editors going to the same cocktail parties and sending their kids to the same schools and everything, that they're so worried about giving up access that they've maybe at times, and especially the run-up to the war is a perfect example, they've lost sight of their responsibility as journalists to really hold those in power accountable. They've started to treat anything said by a government official as the news, and they bounce it off with a quote from the other party, but that's it. They're not, are a lot of them, and not every journalist. There's great journalists out there. I think, the folks at Knight Ridder, for example, were voices in the wilderness in the run-up to the war. They were saying, it just doesn't add up the more we report. But there was such an echo chamber saying, no, it's fine, we have to go, he's got weapons of mass destruction, that nobody dug deep. And it was only later that, all these mea culpas started being published. So I think we've seen a situation where there are limits to what the system can do, and the fewer voices we have that dominate, the more important that becomes. That's why we need more voices, is so there's a chance for a Knight Ridder or a local television person to say, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right to me, and maybe actually be heard. If everybody's marching in lockstep and you only have 3 or 4 choices dictating your national news agenda, then that's the only information you're going to get. And even though there were massive protests against the war, a lot of skepticism coming from elite and non-elite circles, that didn't make the news narrative. And I think that's what's so dangerous about even further consolidation, like Rupert Murdoch's takeover of the Wall Street Journal, because you're in a situation where Murdoch's going to control a broadcast network, a national cable news channel, and a national daily newspaper. So this is 3 of maybe 10 or 11 outlets that set our national news agenda, that all the local newspapers and local TV stations take their cues from, all in the hands of one guy. And this is one guy who's very close to, for example, the current administration, and he's seen wherever he's been that he puts his personal politics and his personal business interests first. The New York Times and the Washington Post may have apologized for their failures of reporting in the lead up to the war, but Murdoch's New York Post never apologized. And none of the 175 papers he owns across the world that editorialized in favor of going to war have ever really taken a step back from that position. So I think that shows the kind of power that one owner or one company can have, and it doesn't mean that Rupert Murdoch shouldn't own newspapers or